It's November, holiday, Thanksgiving, all of those things are coming up, but it's still time for another grain for our Grains Explorer Challenge that we are doing in 2024. And I have to say, this month we're probably looking at our most unique grain because not only is it an ancient grain, it's actually originates from Asia, but it's not rice. It's a gluten-free grain, and despite its name, it's not a wheat. It's actually more related to things like rhubarb. This month, it's all about buckwheat. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel, I teach you all things real whole grains from a biblical perspective. I teach you why you should be consuming real whole grains, what they are, how to mill your wheat, how to mill your grains, bake that delicious bread, and more. So if that's your jam, be sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the little bell icon to be notified of future videos. For those of you who are new, we are exploring a new grain each and every month for 2024. It's in our Grains Explorer Challenge. Each and every month, I introduce you to the grain that we are focusing on for that month. And anyone can join along, but for the full adventure, be sure to sign up for the Grainy Bunch. This is my exclusive membership group. I love you, my Grainies. Y'all are absolutely amazing. And my Grainies get extra recipes, extra videos, live monthly Zoom calls, and private MeWe group, and more. So if you're wanting to dive even deeper and maybe want to connect with fellow grain lovers, then be sure to just go to grainsandgrit.com/grainsexplorer to find out about the Grains Explorer Challenge and also to sign up for the Grainy Bunch as well. Also, if you are new to our Grains Explorer, be sure to check out the playlist up here to catch up on all the grains that we have explored this year so far. Now, as always, what we will cover in this video is, first of all, an overview and history of buckwheat. Number 2, the nutritional benefits. Number 3, how buckwheat is typically used. And number 4, how I plan on using buckwheat in my kitchen and ideas for using it in yours. First off, please comment below. Let me know if you have experience with buckwheat. Do you like it? Do you hate it? What do you plan on trying this month? Let me know in the comments below. All right, so first up, history and overview of buckwheat. As I stated, it is an ancient grain. Archaeologists date it back to Asia, specifically China, and I've kind of seen conflicting source, whether it's like Southwest or Northeast China, but bottom line is buckwheat does date back to China roughly about 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. I mean, we're going all the way back. It is then documented in Europe around the 14th and 15th centuries, eventually made its way over to the US in about the 17th century. And it was actually quite a popular grain here in the United States until the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century. Because of the Industrial Revolution, better fertilizers came out, and because people were discovering these fertilizers, other crops like wheat and maize, which need good fertilization, they became a bit more popular. And to give you all a little bit of perspective, in 1918, here in the United States, over 1 million acres were producing buckwheat, and that died off pretty quickly to the 1950s, where only about 150,000 acres were growing and cultivating buckwheat. Now, it has been regaining popularity despite its name because, it is a gluten-free grain thanks to the gluten-free craze. Buckwheat and other gluten-free grains have been making a comeback. Another cool thing is that it can be grown in a variety of climates. From what I was seeing, is pretty much anyone can grow buckwheat. However, it actually does best in cool, moist climates, but it can handle subpar soil. It's also fairly easy to grow. It doesn't really need pesticides or fertilizers, and it's fast. It matures just within 30 days. So from whenever you plant it to harvesting, that's only 30 days compared to several months that it takes for other crops like wheat and corn. Now, it can be killed by frost, and high temperatures can cause it to just not produce very well. And of course, it is susceptible to drought because of its short root system. Hence, where it grows in just 30 days. Well, that's a short root system, so it is a bit more susceptible to drought. Okay, so buckwheat. Wheat is in the name, but it's not related to wheat at all. So where in the world did it get its name? And this is actually quite fascinating. We actually have the Dutch to thank for that. It got its name from the way that it looks. As you can see here, it's a really unique looking grain. It's very pyramid, kind of like a pyramid. in its shape, but it actually got its name because it resembles the seed of a beech tree. And the Dutch called it, and I'm probably gonna slaughter the pronunciation, Buckwheat. Buckwheat? I don't know if it's like German. Buckwheat. If you speak Dutch, let me know how to pronounce it in this description. This is how it is spelled, which means it is translated as beech wheat. So, pretty cool. As stated, it's not related to wheat, but more like related to rhubarb and sorrel and knotweed. But it is considered a pseudo cereal like amaranth and quinoa because of its ability to be basically ground into flour like wheat or made into a cereal like wheat, hence the name pseudo cereal. So who actually grows buckwheat? And this is very interesting because if you love buckwheat, this may be a problem for you here in the United States because the number one grower of buckwheat is actually Russia, coming in at a whopping 55% of the buckwheat that was grown and sold in the entire world in 2022. Followed number two by China at 23%, and then the Ukraine at 7%. And if you've been following politics lately in the past couple years, Russia and Ukraine are kind of at war with each other. So I actually haven't looked, and I'm kind of curious to see how that's affecting buckwheat production right now. I don't know, but also on the flip side, the United States is the number 4th producer. Predominantly, it is grown here in the United States in New York, Pennsylvania, North Dakota, Washington, and Minnesota. So we do grow it here in the United States, which is probably a good thing because otherwise it would be extremely expensive right now because of the geopolitical type issues going on, and we would be importing all of it. So we do actually produce it here in the United States. But ironically, even though we do produce it in the United States, most of our buckwheat is actually exported to Japan. And we'll get into the reason why later. So that brings us up to the nutritional benefits of buckwheat. As I stated, it is a gluten-free grain. So for those of you who may be needing gluten-free type grains, this is an excellent one to have. But it's also just like any whole grain, meaning it's going to be great in high fiber, in magnesium, phosphorus, your B vitamins, copper, all of those things. Just generally the benefits that we receive from whole grain, so long as it's used in its whole grain form. Now, buckwheat is actually very rich in an antioxidant known as rutin, which is very great. It's a great anti-inflammatory. But bottom line, it's a great grain. God designed it to be nutritious and wholesome for our good, and yet another great grain to just include in a well-balanced diet. All right, number 3, what is buckwheat typically used for? And I have to say I was a little surprised by some of these uses. Obviously, the first use is in food. People eat and consume buckwheat. If you are actually a fan of the Little House on the Prairie series, you may have actually heard of buckwheat because in the book, The Long Winter, we actually see and read about Almanzo making buckwheat pancakes. And as I stated earlier, that before the Industrial Revolution, buckwheat was actually a very popular grain here in the United States. And so that's why we see these older recipes where they were making things like buckwheat pancakes. It's also a very popular form of porridge known as kasha in Eastern Europe. The French love buckwheat crepes, so that's something to definitely try. In India, buckwheat is known as something I'm going to have to look at, kutu ka atta, and is associated with many festivals. And the reasons why many of our buckwheat is actually exported to Japan is because the Japanese love these noodles called soba noodles that are made from buckwheat. And yes, I've actually researched to see if we can actually make these type of noodles at home. And from what I was seeing is that can be quite tricky and weird to do. So many recipes that you might find where making soba noodles at home do not do 100% buckwheat. They do about 20% of wheat flour to make it a little bit easier. So I suggest if you want pure buckwheat soba noodles, you may want to leave it up to the professionals, but go ahead and try it. I probably won't, but feel free to try it and let me know how it turns out. And then of course, buckwheat, of course, you could grind it into flour, and grinding it into flour means you can use it as a flour. Like I said, the pancakes, the waffles, adding it in, maybe mixing it into a muffin recipe. There's many, many uses. When you can grind up a grain, lots of things can happen. It's also used as a cover crop, and in fact, bees love buckwheat, and it produces a very unique type of honey. So if you are a beekeeper, may want to try growing some buckwheat for your bees that you love so much and see how that honey turns out. And also, being a cover crop helps to put nutrients back into the soil as well. Now, it is a gluten-free grain, so buckwheat is actually used in gluten-free beers as well as whiskeys because of its gluten-free aspect. Now, the whiskeys are generally produced in the US and France, and then in Japan, they have a distilled drink known as shoku, I think is how you pronounce it, a distilled drink made from buckwheat. There are also different types of teas in China, in Korea, and Japan. I will kind of list that here on the screen, the names of them, so I do not slaughter the pronunciation. And the most surprising use of buckwheat is actually in pillows. Yes, there is a market for having pillows with buckwheat hulls in them, and they state that it's good for those who may be allergic to feathers. If you like feather pillows, those, if you have allergies, this is a kind of more allergy-free one, so long as you're not allergic to buckwheat. But I've also seen advertisements where they say that because of the buckwheat hulls, it's better with your spinal alignment, helping you sleep better. So I found that very fascinating. All right, last but not least, how to be using buckwheat in your kitchen. As I stated, probably the easiest way to do it and to start off with is grind it up into flour and use it in pancakes. Now, I will say, I have tried this before with my pancake recipe, which is a buttermilk pancake recipe. Wasn't a fan, okay? Just, I might need to try it again. I may need to tweak my recipe, maybe not using buttermilk. All I know is it just wasn't a fan. So if you have made buckwheat pancakes, please share your recipe in the comments below, because all I know is we weren't a fan of mine, but I need to try again. So I'm going to try it again. Another easy way is to make kasha. It's just a porridge, y'all. It's a traditional type of porridge. Now, do know that it actually is toasted. So generally how kasha is made is you need to lightly toast your buckwheat groats. So the whole buckwheat, just lightly toast them on about medium heat for about 45 minutes until they're light and golden brown. And then you basically just add 1 cup of the buckwheat groats to about 1 3/4 cups of water. Add in maybe around a teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of butter, and then just bring it up to a simmer and let it simmer until it's done, which usually can be anywhere from 18 to 25 minutes. You can choose to add more butter if you want, add a little bit more salt to your taste, whatever you're wanting to do. But that's a super easy way, and it's a very common and popular porridge in Eastern Europe. Again, kasha. You can also use it to make waffles, crepes. Like I said, the French love buckwheat crepes. Again, grind it up to flour, probably just make it like normal crepes. There are just, again, so many uses. You may be able to use it in a granola recipe. I don't know because of the shape and the way the grain is, but you may be able to. You let me know. But bottom line is this just, again, another great whole grain to add to your grain arsenal. And there you have it, y'all. That is an introduction to buckwheat. Let me know again in the comments below what your favorite recipes are. Share those recipes so we can know them as well. And if you're not a member of the Grainy Bunch, be sure to go check it out. Just grainsandgrit.com/grainsexplorer to find out more about the Grains Explorer Challenge. I cannot believe we have 1 more month left, and next month is einkorn. I saved one of the most popular ones for last. So be sure to check out this playlist over here with all the videos with our Grains Explorer recipe. And I hope that y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.